A very good afternoon, everybody. Today is the third day of our presentations. This is the semester 3 students making the presentation. This is batch 2021-23. On this third day, you all are going to make presentations on post-colonial studies. In the morning slot, we already had taken the presentations. Now in the evening slot, we will have this. I think we have not changed the banner there. In that, anybody will be able to change the banner. Instead of morning session, we have to do evening session. In the podium laptop, there is morning session. So there will be a folder of photographs, images, OBS. In OBS, we have done that. So if anybody can make that change. Okay, so let us have a list of the students who are going to make presentation in this session. Okay, so Aamena will read on comparison between women's language, body and madness in Wide Sargasso Sea. And you are going to read two texts, Wide Sargasso Sea and Sula also. Bhavna will make presentation on Susan Barton, the protagonist of the novel Foe by James Coetzee. Dhruvita on globalization, definition, process and concept. Dhvani on themes of Foe. Divya Parmar will read on postcolonialism, views in Wretched of the earth. You have to make title when you write title. P should be capital in postcolonialism. All keywords should be capital. We have instructed you about this several times. Now, when I copy paste this on my YouTube channel or social media, then it becomes my mistake. So it is already going live now, so it will remain as the mistake committed by me. So, and in the live, we don't want to make comments about the errors, but one of you will always make some mistake or error. So, instruction to one student is for everybody, and we are not in a KG class that everybody requires a separate instruction. Samadar ko ishara kafi. If it is told to one student, then it doesn't require that everybody will repeat the same mistakes. Divya Sheta on postcolonialism in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Emisha on Fanon's theory of violence. Himanshi will read on the mad women in the attic. Annette and Antoinette. Hinaba will read on subaltern perspective through Antoinette's character in Wide Sargasso Sea. And Hirva's presentation will be last. It will be on violence in Wretched of the earth. You all have submitted your presentations in Google Classroom. You are going to make your presentation in StreamYard through Google Slides using Google Classroom. In Google Classroom, there we have a system of teacher evaluation through rubric, and in the 7 criteria, your presentation will be evaluated, like subject knowledge, organization of ideas, your elocution, mechanics of writing, grammar, spelling errors, non-verbal skills like eye contact, body language, enthusiasm will be checked. And last 2 parameters are on research, writing. So originality of ideas and how you make use of sources to prove your point. What are your points of argument and how you are using the sources to prove your arguments. And when you are using sources, you are supposed to make a proper documentation of that as per MLA style. So on that ground, teacher will be evaluating all the students, and students are also evaluating each other. That we have a system of peer evaluation and also that of self-evaluation. So in an online form, all the students will be evaluating on the Likert scale. 1 to 5 points. Uh, and we have seen that in a quite interesting way. This is going on. So these are the responses, and you get a random chart of how you are evaluated by your peer group. You also get a link to watch this, and you might be observing that how you are evaluated by your peer group. When you submit the evaluation, you get a link also to read this charts also, so that can help it remain transparent. Also, it remains transparent and open. Every day you can see how things are evaluated, so that remains transparent for everybody to observe. And based on this, we will have a final chart at the end of fifth day also. So that is the system of our presentations. And let us start with the first presentation of the day. Okay? And we will have today first one from Aamena. Yeah.
Is it visible? Good afternoon, everyone, respected sir and my dear friends. Today, my topic is based on Against Society, Women's Language, Body and Madness in Wide Sargasso Sea and Sula by Toni Morrison. This is my information. Table of content, brief summary of Wide Sargasso Sea, brief summary of Sula, difference between both the character, Antoinette and Sula, and conclusion. I will start with a brief summary of Wide Sargasso Sea. Wide Sargasso Sea is written by Jean Ayres. Antonio mentioned is and Jean Ayres as Bertha in Jean Ayre. She is an West Indian and who marries an unnamed in Jamaica. Antonia is mad and frequently violent. Her husband confines her to an attic to his house at Tonford, and only he and Graceful is a caretaker of Antoinette, and the action of the novel takes place in West Indies. This is the brief summary of Sula. Sula is written by Toni Morrison. It is the story of two black women friends and their community of Middleton in Ohio. These are the characters. Sulapis is the main character. Eva Peace is the grandmother of Sulapis. Boy Peace is the husband of Eva Peace who has left her. Hannah Peace is a mother of Sula. Ralph is son of Eva. Helen Wright, Neil Wright are mother. Neil's mother is Helen. Cedric is a soldier. Jude Greene is a husband of Neil, and Little Chicken is a boy who they met at the riverside. Now I will start with the Antoinette, woman's language in White Sargasso Sea. Woman's language, both madness, also explains silence, mad, evil, and women's in White Sargasso Sea. It is referred by Helen in a history of women's writing in White Sargasso Sea, expose the marginalized condition of women within the patriarchal issues such as colonialism, race, political oppression, and mental illness. uh, in this story, Antoinette is very much harassed by her husband. She is a patriarchal society based on male dominant. So she is always under her husband. What he tells, she does. Uh, In childhood, also, her mother Antoinette leaves her because he mostly spent his time with his son Perry and her childhood difficulties, and she didn't have support from her childhood from her parents. So Jane Eyre's using Antoinette husband represent the patriarchal society causes of woman silence. In this story, Jane Eyre use Antoinette husband as a patriarchal society. In this, also the main phallus is a center. It shows the muscularity of the male. The rest of the world, which I define as other, as only the meaning of relation to me as a father, mother, professor of others. This is said by Phylum in the article. This phallus occurs physical differentiation, especially women feel incomplete and broken. Rogers uses his power and causes. Rogers, the husband of Antoinette, is using Antoinette. He has not married Antoinette for love, but he has married Antoinette for the money. Here, the patriarchal and his patriarchal uses his own language in the world. Language has very crucial power in this. Lacan has said the point out of role of language and importance of mirror stage. Lacan mentions the role of male in society. In this context, Lacan indicates the Rogers and phallocentric world. Antonio accepts what her husband said, what he husband says, he does that. Antonio tries to fit in the society of Racha's language and meanings. Antonio is a girl in which whatever his husband tells, he does that. Rochester is a signifier of Antoinette's life. Now I will discuss about the Sula and woman's language in Sula. Sula is a very independent girl in the novel. She is against. Is not using her what her society tells. She's against it. Sula tells is a different black woman in a bottom which is located in Oya, America. Neil is a friend of Sula. She is very traditional and she believes in patriarchal and traditional society, while Sula doesn't believe in patriarchal society. Morrison creates a character that uses her language, her and body against the society through the character of Sula in the novel Sula. uh, Sula managed to sharp her discourse in society. Sula forms her idea by herself and she also has used her language. She stands as a root role in the patriarchal society. Sula thinks that her identity is equal to the male in the society. Helen Noxious puts forward the power of woman's oral drive, anal drive, vocal drive. All these are our strengths, and among them in the gestation drive, just like a desire to write, a desire to leave self from within, a desire of swollen belly for a language for body. Sula represents a woman body. She knows her strength and uses her strength for future. For woman future, woman should realize their power. She doesn't have to rely on somebody. What the male character says, she is always independent by herself and freedom she has for herself. Now, madness in Sula and madness in Wide Sargasso Sea. Antonia represent this woman that she is a patriarchal and whatever her husband says, she does that. The power is in the hand of the male character. Sula is also having a patriarchal society, but she is against it and she's an independent girl in that. For taking control, she betrays his wife. Antonia is here, them on the and for that, Antonia is a mad woman who tries to poison him. I think his medicine represent the woman's power instead of madness in Rochester over the power she wants to take care. When Sula Antonio goes to the his maid Christianophile, she asks her to give some things that her husband attracts to her towards her. But Rochester come to know about this that she's trying to poison me and she bites her husband in her arms. So now the character of Sula. Sula desires to create her own identity, her own independence. She threatens conventional male society and traditional rules accepted in bottom. She doesn't want any more admiring who she is. Sula is a very free, independent girl. She is also living in that patriarchal society, but she is very independent by her own self. She steals male identity while in the act of leaving them pleasure. Sula steals Jude identity, and Jude is the husband of Neil. And when she returns back to bottom, she is in love with Neil's husband Jude, and she. This shows the weakness of male society. Actually, Shula struggles for survival are accepted as a madness and insanity because of the aim of this struggle is to change traditional society role and rules. Neil's behavior and community values supported Sula's madness. Ironically, Antoinette, supported by community like Sula, but Antonia couldn't express her feeling. Why Sula was very much free, independent. She shows her thoughts and feelings. She was not under the control, while Antonia was under the control. Sula takes her and Antonia's revenge against the society. Conclusion. Toni Morrison's character Sula, using her independence, language, and even her body, could struggle with her society and rules of his society. Like Lilith, she becomes the voice of woman in her society. She apologizes man in her society. The cause of woman madness was created by pressure, strict rules, male power, religion, patriarchal society. Jane Eyre character Antoinette couldn't struggle with strict rules. Her husband Antoinette and Sula, both the characters are very opposed. Antonia was she was highly believing in patriarchal society, was a traditional woman, and Sula was not a traditional girl. She didn't believe in the patriarchal society. These are my resources, and thank you.
So, Amina, my question is, do you find any similarity between the writing style of Jean Rhys and Toni Morrison?
Writes and Toni Morrison. Jane writes write on the patriarchal society of female, that they are male dominant and female are under the pressure of what their husband tells, and is based on the racism. And while in the Sula, it shows the free independent girl. Both have a different independent and dependent.
Amina, my question is, can you see the patriarchal way of looking at the Wide Sargasso Sea and Sula?
Yes, in the in White Sargasso Sea, is showing the patriarchal society, male dominant society. Antoinette is under the pressure, and her husband also marries her because of money, not for the love. And while in Sula, she is a very free, independent girl. She is not showing her weakness, but when she returns back to bottom, she's in love with the husband of Neil. That shows that weakness of the male in the society.
Hello everyone, I'm Bhavna Sosa. Today is my topic Susan Barton, the protagonist of the novel 4 by J.M. Coetzee. This is my informations. First of all, about the Four. Four is 1986, a novel by South African born Nobel laureate J.M. Coetzee, woven around the existing plot of Robinson Crusoe. Four is written from the perspective of Susan Barton, a castaway who landed on the same island inhabited by Crusoe and Friday as their adventures were already underway. Robinson Crusoe, it is a French story unfolded as Barton's narrative while in England attempting to convince the writer Daniel Foe to help transform her tale into a popular fiction. And then about James Coetzee's information. James Coetzee, in his full name, John Maxwell Coetzee. He is born on February 1940 in Cape Town, South African. He is South African novelist, critic, translator noted for his novel about the effect of colonization. In 2003, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. About Susan Barton. So, James Coetzee introduced us to the dynamic character of Susan Barton. Susan Barton's growing sense of independence and willpower is one unprecedented at the time and adds a new perspective to the story of Robinson Crusoe. Then Susan Barton, the woman on the Crusoe's island. Here, Katie DeBook says that throughout the novel, even long after Crusoe's death, she describes the island as Crusoe's island. She finds herself as the mere female companion to the king and his man servant Friday. Barton rationalize Crusoe's role of king as she sees him on the bluff with the sun behind him, all red and purple staring out to sea. I thought he is a truly kingly figure. He is the true king of Ireland. Barton's role as a submissive supporting character to Crusoe's display Coetzee's formulation of Susan as a man's woman. Susan is a sensual woman and as the only female character in both Defoe's novel as well as Coetzee's novel, she is represented through her sexuality. Susan Barton is a man's woman whose story is told through the words of a male author, both from outside the text and inside the text. She is created by one man, James Coetzee, as a woman of confusion and subtlety. For is not a story about her life, but seems to be a device to describe her male counterparts instead. Susan Barton is an unreliable narrator. Jason Price written, there is no need for us to know what freedom means. Susan, freedom is a word like any word. It is but the name we give to the desire you speak of. The desire to be free. What concerns us is the desire, not the name. Susan Gender and Rationality. Susan Barton, the female protagonist, is rational and struggles for power and independence in the society of the Enlightenment where the story is set. She is seen as non-rational, less valuable, and as other of the white European male due to her gender. Uh, and here is citation. Thank you.
Not received question in the comment. question. Let it get reflected here.
My question is, do you find any So, Bhavna, my question is, do you find any other characters like Susan in Coetzee's other works?
No, but Daniel Defoe's works character Robinson Crusoe is similar to Susan Barton's.
My question is, do you find patriarchy affecting Susan's Barton character?
I'm
Visible. Hello everyone. Myself Dhruvita Dhameliya. My topic is globalization, definition, process and concept of globalization. Definition of globalization. The term globalization comes from English as a base of word globalization, which refers to the emerging and international network belonging to an economical and social system. One of the earliest use of the term globalization as a known was in 1930 in a publication entitled Towards New Education to designate an overview of the human experience in education. As Larissa mentioned in her article, the near-term giant corporation was used in 1897 by Charles Russell to describe the big national trust and other large enterprise of that time. Since 1960, both terms began to be used interchangeably by economic and researcher in social science and were used in until about mid 1980. Roland, a professor of sociology at the University of Aberdeen, was the first person who defined globalization as the understanding of the world and the increased perception of the world as a whole. Globalization can be linked to the local, the national, and the regional state. On the one hand, a connection is made between social and economic relationship and network organized on local and national level. It connects social and economic relationship and network crystallized on a wider scale that a regional and global interaction. MBA Market News defined globalization as a globalization referred to the process which companies start operating internationally and develop influence across border. In fact, people use the term so commonly today that it has taken on some additional meanings. Often people see globalization as an undesirable and even evil consequence of business, expanding and becoming giant multinational. The term describes the tendency towards international investment, trade, and information technology. It also refers to the outsourcing of manufacturing across border. Additionally, the term refers to companies relocating their production plant in different countries. Characteristic of globalization, relocation and over territory, speed and power of technological innovation, and the increase of the respective risk, global growth of multinational corporation, how the forming movement of global free market lead to instability and division. These are the characteristics according to Sandhu Kutrela, but other characteristics like accessibility, terrorism, free trade, culture, capitalism, monopoly power, environment. There are many such characteristics of globalization. Types of globalization. There are mainly seven types of globalization: technological, financial, economic, political, cultural, ecological, and social. In technological, we can refer the idea of change in technology entire world, that we are using the technology of America and America using technology of another nation. Financially, like in Indian people can go outside of India and earn money in financial stable. Politically, like in Indian people are now becoming politician in other country and became the member of parliament. Cultural globalization, changing of the culture. Sociological, in the sense that if another in foreign something happen, it definitely make effect on the Indian also. Key aspect of globalization. Globalization is a term of connectivity across the entire world of increased economic and cultural life throughout the century. The communication and exchange rate, complexity, and size of network involved. The volume of trade, the interaction, the risk givers reinforce to the label globalization. With the increase of economic interconnection, the political change have dependent the poorer become poor, peripheral country became more dependent on the central economy. As the globalization increase in day by day, the country which are poor became dependent on the country which are financially stable and more developed in the business or economy. We have seen the growth and the globalization of brand. It is not just large corporation operating in several different countries. They also have developed and brought out on the market product that can be sold packing as well as in Washington also. Brands like a Coca-Cola is not only limited to their country, but it also spread in worldwide. Geo, like Geo is now ruling entire world. There are Geo can beat the to beat many other cards and many other company also. Like for coming at the Geo came here with the scheme and now it is ruling on entire world. Vodafone and Idea how to be merged in a way to beat a Geo. Cons- Contemporary globalization. The globalization involves spreading of idea, practice, and technology, and it is little more than internationalism and universalization. It is not simply the modernization or westernization. It is much more than market liberalization. The globalization has a five vectors that act on human society. Vectors like a political vector, military, social, religious, and economic. As Sandhu mentioned that Will Hutton and Anthony Giddens says that globalization is the interaction of extraordinary technology innovation combined with a global influence which give today's changing its complexity. Globalization is something which give development in a certain way. The decline of power of national government. Globalization is increasing because of the declination of government. As we know that whenever any company establish or start, they work on a policy of government. But as time come and it became developed and increase in their power, government has to follow their policy and terms. Coinlays point out that the impact of globalization is, however, a strong argument, and that is the most felt by the extent of which policy everywhere are now established market driven. It means not only that the government can manage national economic, but also that in order to survive in their office, they have to increase their ability to drive national policy in a such a way as to be adapt to the pressure of transnational market forces. Anthony Gray has noticed that the global market doesn't allow corporation to assume the past function of the sovereign state. Actually, both one and the other become more and more weakened and overthrown. While multinational have played a significant role in the growth of globalization, it is important not to exaggerate the degree of control they have on the dynamic of globalization. As we know that when company established, they have work according to policy of government, but as time pass, they become that much in power that government has to follow their policy, otherwise the situation or the space of politics can be changed by the company. Globalization and its impact on people. Globalization is have a positive and negative both the aspect. Hilal Vani write in an article that globalization is associated with a rapid and significant human change. The movement of people from rural to urban areas have and the growth of cities in the developing world, especially in link to substandard living for many. Family disruption and social and domestic violence are increasing. For example, in 2004, New Delhi policy reports that indicate that death in the city of about 6 women every day for the dowry-related suicide. Concept of national identity and of family job and tradition are changing rapidly and significantly. There is a concern that competitiveness introduced by globalization is leading to more individualistic society. On the other hand, rapid difference in religion and culture. The nation state is losing influence relative to global economy. As globalization is developed, national loses their impact on the people and society. So crime and everything is increasing with the increasing of the globalization. We can connect with today. I have mentioned some example of once upon a time McDonald only exists in USA and SSBC only existed in UK, but now McDonald is in entire world. It became globalized economy. In India, when Doordarshan was the only available network from the late 1950, the motto of Doordarshan is to spread humanity and to make entertainment of the people, like showing they show like Hum Log, Bunyad, Ramayana, Mahabharat, among other. During 1980, contributed to the ideological conflagration of diverse meaning of publicness with a state-sponsored definition of national community and ideal citizenship. As the time passed, the company are arise and make their own channel in which they show and give advertisement and produce the show. There is a not only motto of entertainment, but the motto is the income and financial perfect perspective. Beginning in the early 90s, Doordarshan hegemony over definition of the public in Indian television was dramatically disputed by the rise of commercial satellite channel. Is the first in English and Hindi, and later in several other Indian languages. Other example are the Olympics began in ancient Greek and continue today also is going, but now the perspective of Olympic is different. FIFA World Cup has more viewer than any other sports event in the world. Even though only a handful of countries compete all the way through the finals, people all across the globe sit down and watch the same match on TV, no matter their location. Travel and tourism allows for the globalization of many things like the exchange of money, culture, ideas, and knowledge. There are countless options to make travel more affordable, including budget airlines and low rate hostels also. The Nation is an intergovernmental organization that promotes cooperation in many areas, including human rights, peace, and economics development. With one phone call or email, people from all across the globe world can be together or be in one place. So at the end, we can say that globalization has a neither a negative or positive aspect. It is depend on the society or the people, how they are related, how they are take it. The individual have a free choice to, and society has to ability to make the decision according to the best for the all member. The free market is important, but so it the ability of governments to deal with problems when the free market is failed. Local democratic accountability it is important, but so is international agreement on problems that can only be solved with a corporation far beyond the direct control of individual citizenship. Globalization creates a materialistic culture where everybody is concerned with his own interests and benefit. Nobody is bothering about others. A culture of consumerism and pop culture affected other culture of the world that were having a glorious and best civilization and culture value, which were based on humanity, tolerance, world brotherhood, social justice, and egalitarianism. It is. This is my work citation. Thank you.
I am asking, yes, how can be globalization linked with the cultural globalization?
Sorry.
How can the globalization linked with cultural globalization?
Yes, as a globalization is increasing, people from the local area transfer from cities. They are not going only with their l- luggage, but also they take their culture together. If Indian are going to another foreign world, they are going with their culture, so it's affected by that.
According to you, what is different between globalization and liberalism?
Globalization is about income. Liberalization is a benefit of the people. If there is a something for a rich people, then liberalization allow poor people also to have this thing. Globalization is for everybody for the same, like geo, everybody has the same price of this card. But in liberalization, according to me, there are some benefit for poor or rich people, according to me. Is it visible? Visible? Is it visible? Today I'm going to talk about themes of Foe, the novel written by J.M. Coetzee. This is my personal information about the author. James Coetzee, his full name is John Maxwell Coetzee. He was born on February 9, 1940 in South Africa. He is a South African novelist, critic, and translator. A translator, and his novels are mostly affected and influenced by colonization. And in 2003, he won Nobel Prize for Literature. So summary is the novel that summary of Foe. Foe is the novel that woven around Robinson Crusoe of Daniel Defoe. There are four parts in the novel. So the first part is in the first part, Susan Barton. She is the protagonist. She is searching for her missing daughter in Brazil. She is thrown up on the island after shipboard mutiny and gradually adjusts to the basic environment and company of long-term castaway Crusoe and his African slave Friday. Rescued a year later, she was upon the Crusoe was dead, and she was asked to write with or team up with the any writer. So on the in the part two, marooned again in English society when the chosen writer Daniel Foe flees his debts and run away from the bailiffs. Susan struggles to survive with the newly freed Friday the slaver, and she is now searching for the Daniel Foe who has actually fled. So on the in the third part, Susan eventually finds Foe and queries the book's process. She asks for the content. She want the another story for to write, and Daniel Defoe asks about the another story. So together they speculate about story and truth and the act of writing, and what to do with Friday is now a concern. And in the last part, an undefined neutral voice stresses the generalized beginning and in the end of the story in both the time, and unhinged from embodied search for verifiable fact. In this the true perspective. In two versions, it comes upon the characters in the submerged wreck of the ship, lifeless, only Fry is still barely alive. So the speaker's point of view then travels out into the dimension of experience and sensation beyond human and Iceland and the sea, and beyond both the speech and the writing. So the themes are like authorship, otherness, freedom, truth and power, colonialism, slavery, motherhood, and identity. These are the themes of Foe. So first is the authorship. The idea of authorship emerges in the play on Defoe's name, and the author of Robinson Crusoe was a man of many roles. So in that novel, there were many roles in the for the Robinson Crusoe, and now in this novel, the protagonist is Susan. So it seems like she's purely self-interested, exploiting all resources. Coetzee, through the medium of Susan's direct addresses, first sets up the shadowy figure of Foe, the author claiming to the partner Susan in creating a book. In the first two parts, enterprise and ownership plays a large role in the disputed shape of story. He argues that Friday should be taught to write, but now Friday is old and he is too late for his colon. It is too late to teach him because of this his colonized body. And Foe colonizes Susan's story, and she colonizes Friday's unknown story. So authorship is there in this theme. Then the otherness is also important theme. As a woman, Susan is already the marginalized other, yet she also objectifies Friday in her varied perception. She wonders if he has a cannibal, where he can actually come from, what he understands, why he dances, and most significantly, why he has no tongue, and whether it was slave traders or Crusoe who cut it out. So it could be possible that Crusoe is the boss. She projects some of her own answers onto him, but also opens herself out to absorbing information about him through observation and awareness. He is like a blank slate in many ways, as it often the case with others, those from different culture and races. White people project their reading onto him and create a story for him, maintaining his actual silence and virtual invincibility. And freedom. There is a lake of freedom seems in the this novel. For example, the Susan and Foe, they are caught up in the system. Susan is finding her daughter. She needs to find her daughter, and it is improvised by her search, which takes another form when she returns to England. Physically, safety is also a concern for a woman. Friday is her burden, but he paradoxically represents the lost freedom because he is the slave. He remains as a slave, constrained by loss and a word that is alien to him. Leaving the Iceland does not represent freedom, and his life with Crusoe was simple and safe. And it is written here that Susan says that our desires are plain, his and mine, but how is Friday to recover his freedom, who has been a slave all his life? There is an urging that we need, all of us in our hearts, to be free, yet which of us can say what freedom truly is? Now, truth and power. The deserted tropical Iceland has become a trope for fantasy in the modern world, and dreams have become a central language. Truth and desire at the core of the novel's themes, and our tenuous grip on reality, language, voice, and identity become the focus of Susan's discussions with Foe in the part 3. So, what is Susan's story? What happened to her daughter? Is it that women's story are also invincible, repressed, and eclipsed? Who is the young woman, and what are Foe and Susan to each other? Did Friday lose his tongue at the end of the oppressors? What were Crusoe's intention for Postoni in building the terraces on the Iceland? So these are some questions that are that are these are avoided in the novel. So we can say that there is a lake of truth there, and the power. The frames and layers of story within Foe are centered to the truth project and the reflection on language and power. Self-reflexive metafiction interest, of course, in the higher author are at play. Authorship, as Foe and Susan's discuss, is like providence, an unknowledgeable God, creative power, the wonder of words, and power of writing. For example, you and I know in our different ways how rambling and occupation writing is, and conjuring is surely much as the same. Have we cause to believe that the leaves it is given us to life proceed with any more design that these whimsical adventures? And the another is colonialism and slavery. So when it was written, Robinson Crusoe, 1719, when it was actually written, it was the time of slavery and colonialism. People were taken from Africa and they were transported across the Atlantic Ocean to the colonial in the New World. So Ford suggests that Friday was one of these people who is actually slave. He is taken from Africa by slavers and was destined for a life in shackles until a shipwreck cast him ashore on the Iceland with Crusoe. The Iceland becomes a microcosm remuneration. Friday has no tongue and no way with which to communicate his suffering. He is the slave, so that he is robbed of his agency and freedom just like the slaves of the era. The development of Friday as a character reflects the themes of colonialism and the way in which attitudes toward colonialism and slavery have developed in the centuries since the Defoe's original book to the Foe. Susan considered Friday to be the stupid man and rude slave at first. She does not even consider the possibility that he might be interesting or worthy of her attention. She treats him as she would any house slave in Brazil by her own admission, and she is disgusted that he fails to treat her with falling respect. Now, the last theme is motherhood and identity. Susan is a mother without a child. She has spent years searching for her daughter. Her daughter was supposedly kidnapped and sent to the Americas, and the search has taken over Susan's life. Originally from a relatively modest but successful home, Susan spends everything she has in her fruitless search. Now, on the other hand, when she shipwrecked during the voyage to England, and once again her life is thrown out of the chaos, now the narrative and the story changes because now she is on the another side. The narrative begins at Susan swims toward the islands. She meets Crusoe and Friday and enters into the new identity as a castaway. So from the motherhood and to the castaway, she's somewhere having the suffering between identity. So these are my references. Thank you. Can you say something more about otherness?
Yeah. Uh,
Dhvani, do you find any similarity in Fo's themes, authorship or freedom?
Yes, freedom, right? And authorship. Okay. So first, the freedom's point. Uh, we can see that as I told a lot that Friday is a slave. So it seems like he is not free. Then Susan is also not free, as having she is somewhere living in the patriarchal society, and she is finding her daughter. So she has constantly a conscious mind about her daughter. Then she is cast away. Then she is dependent on someone, and she is not having the freedom. She is not having a free mind. And yeah.
Yes, for Dhruvita, there is one question in YouTube comment, so you can reply there. Parth Devani has asked one question, so you can type and reply.
I request to everyone, please close your tabs. It's visible. Yes, sir. Slow network. That's why. Hello, everyone. Myself, Divya Parmar. Today, I am going to present post-colonialism views in the wretched of the earth. This is my information. Points to ponder. What is post-colonial literature? About the writer, post-colonial views in novel and citation. So, what is post-colonial literature? The term post-colonialism is made with the two words, post and colonialism. So, the post means after, and colonialism means colonialism is a word which is derived from a Roman word colonia. Colonia means farm or settlement. Settlement means a people moves in a large groups from one locality to the another locality or places. But after the settlement, people still keep their connectivity with their motherland. So here we find two kinds of a people after settlement. First one is a settlers, and second one is a inhabitant or natives. So settlers means who came from other places and they settled in a new localities. And inhabitants or native means who are staying in their land. We find different terminologies are used to describe settlers and inhabitants. For the settlers, we use a terminologies like colonial power, colonial, coloniers, colonialist, and for the inhabitants, we use terminologies like native, primitive, or savage, abnormalism. Here, natives or inhabitants are the real owners of the land. So, settlers are people who are coming from another land and settle here. As their point of view of us settlers, they put their views as they want to resettle the society of natives. Where does it come from? The post-colonial literature comes from Britain's former colonies in the Caribbean, Africa, and India. Many post-colonial writers write in English and focus on common themes such as struggle for independence, immigration, national identity, elegance, and childhood. What is the post-colonial theory? Post-colonial theory is a literary theory or critical approach that deals with literature produced in the countries that were once or are now colonies of the other countries. It may also deals with the literature written in or by citizens of the colonizing countries that takes a colonies to their peoples as its subjects matter. The theory is based around the concept of the otherness and the resistance. Postcolonial theory became the part of the critical toolbox in 1970s, and many practitioners credit Edward Said's book Orientalism as the being of a founding work. Typically, the proponents of the theory examine the ways in which writers from the colonized countries attempt to articulate and even celebrate their cultural and identities and reclaim them from the colonizers. They also examine the ways in which the literature of the colonial powers is used to justify colonialism through the prepositions of the images of the colonized as inferior. So, in the view, when we see the settlers and inhabitants, the inhabitants view always in the place of the inferior, and settlers as in the place of the power, politics, and that place where they are in the position of power, they can
reform or resettled the inhabitants. However, the attempts at the coming up a single definition of post-colonial theory have proved controversial, and some writers have strongly critiqued the whole concept, and Franz Fanon is one of them. So, about the writer, Franz Fanon is in full Franz Omer Fanon, born on July 20, 1925, fought the France, Martinique, and died on December 6, 1961. He was West Indian psychoanalyst and social philosopher, known for the theory that same neuroses are socially generated, and for his writings on behalf of the national liberation of colonial peoples. His critics influenced subsequent generations of the thinkers and executives. I have not taken a writer as much because uh, my point of view is on post-colonial views. So the four features of the post-colonial literature, or we can say the characteristics of the post-colonial literature. The term post-colonialism is a helpful analytic term that tries to review aftermath of the colonialism as well as the struggle for the independence and the efforts of a colonialism comprise the social and political changes. So to get a freedom from the settlers, they have done so many struggles, and the literature, post-colonial literature, describe these struggles in it. So these are some characteristics: critic aspect, cross cultural aspect, history aspect, patriotic aspects, gender aspects, political aspects, landscape aspect, review aspect, and cultural interrogations aspects. Postcolonialism views in the wretched of the earth. The novel is divided into 5 chapters, and each chapters have contained the views of a post-colonialism. First one is on the violence. Second was a grandeur and the weakness of the spontaneity, the trials and tribulations of the national consequences on the national culture, and fifth one is the colonial war and mental disorder. So, post-colonialism theory asks for justice. It seeks to speak the vast of horrific social and psychological sufferings, exploitations, violence, and enslavement done the powerless victims of the colonization around the world. It challenges the superiority of the dominant Western perspective and seek to the reposition and empower the marginalized and the subordinated others. So the title others for as settlers are not native of that land, but they are in the positions of power. But the natives are inhabitants, called as inhabitants. But these settlers are others, but they are in the power, and the real native or the owner of the land are in at the place of the others, or uh, it pushes back to the resist uh, paternalistic and the patriarchal foreign practices that dismiss the local thought, culture, and practices as uniformed, barbarian, and irrational. Here, in first, when we read the first chapter, here we find that Franz Fanon has used the metaphor of the man for the settlers. As the we can see in the patriarchal society, the man is in the power. So as when we see the society, settlers are in the power. It identifies the complicated process of establishing an identity that is both different from yet influenced by colonist view has left. In the first chapter, we can see the post-colonial view of violence. As the title of the chapter, Fanon puts his view on violence, and according to him, the act of decolonization will always involve the violence. So, settlers has used the violence to reform or resettle the inhabitants. So, for the decolonization, we also need the violence. history, politics, and cultural aspects. We find in the first chapter that the working class have a less power, exploitations in education, religion, and morality. A gender aspect can be seen in the second chapter of the novel. So, in the second chapter, Fanon talks about the colonized intellectuals. Intellectuals of the political parties remain limited to metropolitan areas, even the rural population, and that's how the exercise of violence, the anti-colonial subjectivity, becomes the possible. The third chapter talks about the once of the colonization ended after the situation class conflicts, when once with the violence or without violence, when the colonization ends in society, there are so many problems, and first problem is discussed as the class conflicts. Idea of the education, religion, and freedom for the human rights. Idea of democracy is also well discussed. Fourth chapter talks about the national culture, where the idea of a colonized intellectual who has been educated by colonists by react against him. So, as the part of a resettle the inhabitants, they are first give the education or the information to live a right way as they want to live inhabitants. So, here the fourth chapter. Uh, intellectual who has been educated by the colonist and but the reacts against him for the decolonization. Fifth chapter talks about the colonial wars and mental disorders. Here we can find the mental disorder kinds of things which we can be put as a critical aspects of post-colonial literature. After the World War, psychologists observed the disorder like post-traumatic stress disorder from the soldiers and civilians who witnessed destructions. When we there is a famous line in post-colonialism that when there is no, still we cannot know the story of the lion uh, at the at he it not learn to write. We are only know the story of a hunter. It is the when we listen a story of colonials, we are there is a, must be a story of inhabitants also. uh, so this is the in post-colonial literature we find that the effect, positive effect or negative effect in the by the settlements settlers do with them. Thank you. This is my work citation.
Can you explain any of the post-colonial characteristic briefly?
There is in post-colonial characteristics, there is a political aspect. So when we see settlers and inhabitants in the stage of politics, there are always settlers who are not the real native of the land, but they are in the position of a power, they said their aim is to resettle or rearrange the uh, living style of or the place of inhabitants. But in the real sense, their aim is not like that. There is so many political aspects behind that. So these characteristics we can see in the post-colonial literature.
How does Fanon see violence in the Raj of the Earth?
uh, uh, the novel The Wretched of the Earth. First chapter's title is the violence, and in that Fanon described that for set a rule the settlers using the term violence, and so for that for decolonization we also need the term violence. So Fanon's view about the
about the violence is that we have to accept the term of violence to become a free from that.
In the previous presentation, there are a few things that we can learn to avoid some mistakes. Let me share a screen. So one thing that you have to see, like when you watch your own presentation video recording in YouTube, you might be seeing that if the fonts are smaller, you can't read anything on the screen. So see that when people watch this in video form, how will they be able to read smaller fonts? So if there are lots of text given, then it will be very difficult for the viewers to watch. To keep that as a benchmark, when you in the evening go to get your timestamp, at that time try to see if you normally the mobile is horizontal when people read watch videos. At that time, how will all this thing be visible to them, that you can see? So that will give you an idea what should be the ideal size of the fonts that you use. Then this the background here that is coming is also like this white color or this gray color coming behind the text. That doesn't look good. So you have to remove this. You have to in the setting or anyhow you have to do. So background image, whatever you want to keep in that, how does it get reflected? If you are using this background image of a book, then you have to see that like there are two pages, no? So on that pages your text comes. That way you can organize. So then it looks in sync with the image, your thing. So try to work. We are not like telling this time again and again about making your slides look decent. But well, you can see each other's, and you are seeing that some of you are making very good slides. So based on that, you can learn from each other, and you can see that this can be avoided. So two things that one, this size is okay, this size is big enough, but the background is problematic in this. So as you study art and literature, your theme and your background image, your font color, your background color, everything should have thematic connection, some symbolic connection with what you are speaking that you can try to see. And citation has a problem also, so that I don't think should I repeat because the similar things are there. Study Corgi seems to be a study website, material website. Free essays, this is not a fair qualitative site to refer to. Britannica is fine. ResearchGate, again you have to see which text on ResearchGate they are talking about. The .se.uk also is good. British Academy site also is good enough. Okay, so
Is it visible?
Visible. Good afternoon, friends. Today's my presentation topic is post-colonialism in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. As Edward Said mentioned that since the time of Homer, every European, in what he could say about the Orient, was a racist and imperialist and almost totally ethnocentric. So the text, Joseph Conrad's text, Heart of Darkness, is very much connected with what said is quote. This is my information. Introduction of the presentation is that the journey of Marlowe through first of all I would like to mention that Marlowe is the character present as philosophical independent minded and generally skeptical. So his philosophy of skeptical is very help to reader to read the text as post-colonial study. So the journey of Marlowe through the African jungle and his search for the European Kurds. Kurds is a trader of ivory in Africa and a commander of the trading post. So who exploits the natives by imposing violence on them. So based upon Conrad's own experience in Congo, when he learned how Europeans exploited and traded the natives for their own benefits during his own journey, regarded as an attack on imperialism and criticize immoral treatments of the European colonizer in Africa in 19th century. Furthermore, what Booker states that the book deals with issues such as imperialism, capitalism, race, and gender that were very much at the forefront of the turn of the century European mind. Conrad's ambivalent treatment of these issues is extremely representative of the way they were treated in any number of European discourse of the time. M.H. Abraham mentions about post-colonial studies that the study is the critical analysis of the history, culture, literature, and modes of discourse that are specific to the former colonies such as England, Spain, France, and other European imperial powers. These studies have focused especially on the third world countries in Africa, Asia, and Caribbean islands and South Africa. What post-colonial studies is sometimes also encompass aspect of British literature in the 18th and 19th century viewed through a perspective that reveals the ways in which the social and economic life represented in the literature was tactily underwritten by colonial exploitation. Tyson noting that colonial ideology was based on the colonizer's assumption of their own superiority. What colonizer thinks to empower their colony on the particular country. So their superiority is also to be noted, or is also worth. Is also worth reading while we read post-colonial theory. It is that contrasted with the alleged inferiority of native peoples and the original inhabitants of the lands they invaded. So the colonizers see themselves as superior to the colonized people. So post-colonial study is the study of what colonizers see themselves as superior to the colonized people. So the colonized people were considered other, different, and therefore inferior to the point of being less than fully human. Colonized people is considered less than fully human by colonizers. There is binary opposition between us and them. Who are us? That the civilized, and who are them is the other or savages. So us is colonizers and them considered as colonized people. What is in the novella that undefinable identity of savages, or we can say colonized people, that the protagonist, the story is narrating as a frame narrative style. There is story within story. So Marlowe is the protagonist, and takes this whole story, and Marlowe cannot exactly define the natives. However, the only thing he is sure is that they suffer under the control of Europeans. He just only examined this that they are the native peoples are suffer under the controls of the Europeans, but not exactly what their persona, what they how they suffering. So besides, he is aware that the Europeans also give harm to nature in order to earn more. So in other words, Marlowe realized that Europeans destroy not only the natives but also the jungles. So here, this quotation is also makes this point. Edward said, mentioned in his Culture and Imperialism, that in Europe itself at the end of 19th century, scarcely a corner of life was untouched by the facts of empire. What are the facts is related? The economies were hungry for overseas markets, raw materials, cheap labor, and profitable land. Defense and foreign policy establishments were more and more committed to the maintenance of vast tracts of distant territory and large number of subjugated peoples. So, what said criticized is the dominance of powerful countries over African countries in order to exploit them. Similarly, Marlowe is against European colonialism when, for instance, he falls in a moral dilemma. So, at the very beginning, I talk about his philosophy about skepticism. That he instantly falls that in moral dilemma before meeting Kurt's intended. He explained this dilemma in the book as that it was a moment of triumph for the wilderness, an invading and vengeful rush, which it seems to me I would have to keep back alone for the salvation of another's. Marlowe says that it is impossible to reveal the truth that he experienced during his journey. Here he is talking about curse. That no, it is impossible. It is impossible to convey the life sensation of any given epoch of one's existence. That which makes its truth, its meaning, its subtle and penetrating essence. It is impossible. We live as we dream alone. So he is not mentioned about what he experienced during his journey. So the minority of Europeans is critical about the idea of colonialism, in spite of the fact that they get benefit from it. So talking about the violence in this novel, that is indispensable part of colonialism for the Europeans, and it constantly occurs throughout the novel. While Marlowe tells that a native thought to cause, there is one incident that he in this dialogue that he talk about, that a native is kept that they thought to cause fire there, and has been beaten harshly. A nigger was being beaten nearby. They said he had caused the fire in some way. Be that as it may, he was screeching most horribly. Well, talking about imperialism, so imperialism is what Kurtz imposed imperialism on natives to gain more. However, his greediness and cruelty lead to his death. So, about Kurt's horrifying character, Marlowe states that I had to deal with a being to which I could not appeal in the name of anything high or low. I had even like the niggers to invoke himself, his own excited and incredible degradation. There was nothing either above or below him. And I knew it. He had kicked himself loose of the earth. So this sentence that he had kicked himself loose of the earth is presented that Kurt's imperialism over that country. Kurtz does whatever he wants because there is nothing to restrict him. He also prefers to spend his time in the jungle and thus forgets his civilized life in order to earn more. So, in order to earn more, and Kurtz is so corrupted for ivory trade that he even loses his connections with Europe. According to Homi Bhabha, colonial mimicry. So is the desire for a reformed, recognizable other, capital other, as a subject of a difference that is almost the same but not quite. Based upon this, Kurtz can be accepted as a mimic man since he turns into a savage at the end of the novel, which is one of the criticism of African people also. But Conrad criticized the cruel treatment against the native and imperialism through Kurtz, that Kurtz has led a horrible life due to his passion for ivory trade. So his passion leads him towards death, and he treats the natives so violently that he regrets what he has done and cries twice. The horror. These are the last words while Kurtz was died. These words reflect his feeling of remorse, despite the fact that he writes exterminates all the brutes. Moore expressed that Conrad hated imperialism in Central Africa because of its savageness, selfishness, and devastation. Kurt's final words, the horror, are about how a civilized man can change to savagery when there is no restriction. So Kurtz can be considered as corruption brought to Africa from Europe. And Marlowe supports this idea by stating that I saw him upon his mouth wide. It gave him a wildly voracous aspect, as though he had wanted to swallow all the air, all the earth, all the men before him. Talking about the conclusion, that what Booker states, that Conrad's Charlie Marlowe is it is his full name, is openly critical of much of the European activity that he observed in Africa, especially of the brutal treatment of many of Africans by their European masters. Conrad writes with English readers in mind and does not let the native speak. So, at the beginning of the novel, Marlowe calls Africa as one of the dark places of the earth. In fact, it can be said that the real darkness is in Europe rather than Africa. Due to Europeans' mistreatment, that what Kurtz did, what Kurtz violence actions towards natives in his passionate activeness in about ivory trade. So against that, Europeans' mistreatment against the natives. So further states that both Kurtz and Marlowe refer to the darkness. The former as he is dying, and the latter as he reflects retrospectively on the meaning of Kurt's final words. So briefly, it can be easily claimed that Heart of Darkness is one of the best example of this subversion of European colonialism, because there is perhaps there is the end of Kurt's there is the end of Kurt's dying scene, and this dying scene is perhaps connected with the subversion of European colonialism, since it clearly shows the brutal relationship between Europeans and the natives. These are my citations. Thank you. So, can you explain the word modes of discourse as you mentioned in M.H. Abraham said that postcolonial study is the critical analysis of history, culture, and literature and modes of discourse. Discourse that it means that several discourse like colonialism, their cultural discourse, and that mode of discourse in that sense that it can be considered as here it can be considered that in the discourse under post-colonialism.
Can you explain the difference between imperialism and colonialism?
Yes, imperialism is that is considered as the what colonizer, not graphically, but imperialism is what colonizer makes that their empire at the level of in economic with the social aspects, and colonialism is what colonizers are ruled upon that colonized country, and what colonized people are suffering under colonizers.
Let us have a few things to learn from the last presentation. Let me share a screen. So 2-3 things we have to see here. Good to see that this image is cited here. Yes, you can see the image from 123 RF. So the image is also, when you borrow from some other source, you have to cite. Yeah? Most of you might not be citing images when you take from any of the sources. So that is then word cloud is taken. Then Edward said quotes. Now, it is not good idea to cite from quote sites. We have to go to the original work and verify. We can get a quote from a quote site, but then again you have to take that to the original work and verify it is exactly like that or not. And once you have referred to original work, then original work is to be cited, not the quote sites. Then last one, if you will see, there is some problem, no? Because when you in citation, when you use and another writer, it means there are two writers. Do you see, everybody? You can see that work is Culture and Imperialism. Last one, Vintage Books. It is the same name coming 2 times. Said Edward W. and Edward William Said. Okay, now then. You have referred to this is a good article by Guven Samath article that you have referred in this. So see, what we see here is that you have referred to Guven also in the in-text citation you have referred. But now see, what maybe this you have taken from that article, last paragraph. According to Homi Bhabha. That is what Guven is writing. So now when you are taking from Guven, you have to write according to Guven, and then what you want to say. Are you getting the point? What we have to learn is how Guven is doing. We have to learn. We don't have to copy paste Guven. So you are reading one article, so you have to learn how the article is written. not copy paste the article. So if they are citing somebody and saying according to this, now you are referring to another article. So you have to refer to that writer, like, according to this in this article, and then you are using that to make some argument. Hmm. Hmm. No, that also, but that also you have to write. But that is secondary, that is somebody citing. So first thing you'll have to verify whether he is right or not. So you'll go to the citation. You will say which work Homi Ke Baba. You will go to Homi Ke Baba. You have read it. Now you can directly cite Homi Ke Baba. Getting the point? What is the process? So now why do you rely on Given to cite Homi Ke Baba? Why don't you refer to the original work from the citation of Given and then cite directly Homi Baba? And then something that Given has said, that is his own contribution in that article, that we will say according to Given so and so. Getting the point, everybody? What is the process of doing that you have to do? So the same way that he also earlier also might have referred, Said criticizes. That's what he is putting there. Yes, this is fine. M.H. Abrahams mentioned so and so things here, that you can refer directly. You are referring to the work. That's why. Then now, when this image you have cited, this word cloud you have used here. I think in the title you have used word cloud, so you have cited that. But you can also make such things. There are many websites where you can refer to this wordclouds.com. So again, word cloud also you can make with whatever are the keywords coming in your presentation. Whatever keywords are coming in your presentation, based on that, you can make your own word cloud also. So no need to cite the another people, but you can make your own word cloud on various sites are there, which will help you in making this also. Okay, now you can share the screen.
Visible? Okay, so as we are having this third day of presentation, season 3, post-colonial studies, I'm going to start my presentation with a quotation by Fanon, because my presentation is based upon entirely Fanon's ideas of violence. Fanon once quoted that we are revolting not for any particular culture, but we are revolting very simply for so many things which we cannot breathe for them. Yes. So in Divya Parmar's presentation, we have seen Fanon's personal life and personal information about and contribution of Fanon's in literature. Fanon's born on the in the year of 1925, and in the capital of French colony, that is Martinique. And then when India was getting independence in 1947, and then in early age he was getting education of medicine, and then he went to get educated in 1952, that is psychiatrist. And he was keenly interested in the psychology. Then he written a work that is Black Skin and White Marks. People are very fond of that work, and his notable works are like Black Skin and White Marks and Wretched of the Earth. Because of two works, he is getting the fame in the age we are living. And when he was going to be died, at that time, the later part in his life, he got fame. When we go to the Fanon's thoughts, like which are the main elements which he was carrying in his thoughts, that is first his trace on black consciousness and his revolt against racist colonialism. We now know that as many presentations are watched here, so we know now that what is colonialism, what is colonizers, what is colonized, and how was the process of colonialism by the Divya Parmar's presentation. And I'm not going to with the same ideas, but here Fanon was very personally conscious about this racism, and this consciousness we can see in the work of Fanon, that is Black Skin and White Mask. Secondly, his belief in and concern for creating a humanism. Humanism is something for every writer was concerning about at that time after World War II. Thirdly, the incorporation of existentialist and Marxist influences. We know that at the time of Second World War was getting end of the war. At that time, people were very hungry to know about existentialism, and Marxist idea was on the glorification. Fourthly, the discovery of peasantry, again agents of revolution in the third world. Peasantry means the title under the farmers are going, and it was the fourth concern of Fanon. Finally, his glorification of violence, as he was the psychiatrist, and we know that World War II was just happened when the Fanon was going to study the psychology, and where he when we go to the text, that is Wretched of the Earth, first chapter of the title is of violence, as he was very concerning personally about the violence, and my presentation is going to give a glimpses of that. What is the three main aspect of the issue under consideration of violence? That is, it discusses the meaning of violence in Fanon's thought. It analyzes the importance of Fanon attaches to violence in the process of revolution, because he was the one who was believing that if we want to be free from the colonized, we have to practice the process of violence. It subjects his theory of violence to critical scrutiny. Meaning of violence. Fanon writes in the he has given the meanings of violence in the various sense. That is, first is physical injury. We normally think as a human being that when the word violence came to us, we always think about physical injury. That is, their first encounter was worked by violence, and their existence, that is to say, the exploitation of the native by the settler, was carried on by dint of a great array of bayonets and cannon. So their first encounter. So he is addressing the colonizers, that how their idea of processing of colonization and how they were working by violence. In the sense of force, he is telling that the colonial regime, in term of violence, he says it is obvious here that the agents of government speak the language of pure force. We have seen that this language, certain kind of languages are used in political discourse. When we were studying the novel 1984, in that we have seen, as a matter of fact, Fanon has used the term violence and force interchangeably. He writes, the hecatombs are an indication that between processor and oppressor and oppressed, everything can be solved by forces. That he is quoted is that not only the colonizers were believing that violence is a weapon to do colonization, but the people who are oppressed, they were also believing to violence to revolting in the process. Explaining the real nature of violence, Fanon says, we have seen that it is the institution of the colonized masses that their liberation must and can only be achieved by force. As I have said that colonizers were strongly believed in violence. The representatives of the colonial countries were aggressive and violent and carried things to extreme. His violence means anything except non-violence. His concept of violence encompasses almost the entire range of political pressure. It is not like that colonizers were doing violating the colonized people, that by only the physical violence, but they were using a very weapon of psychological. They were mentally traumas were there after the second World War, and we know that Fanon has studied the various cases in the text that is wretched of the earth, and he has through the light by the psychological lens upon these cases various, including physical or psychological injury, aggression, military, coercion, power and power or force. These are the keywords Fanon is giving for the violence. Importance of violence. First, Fanon maintains that it is only through violence that man creates himself. Now, there are many figures who have given the various kind of ideas about the importance of violence. That is Hegel. Man is product of his thought. That is very common. We can see in many works we are studying in the literature. And Marx is saying that man is the product of labor, because it was the time when colonized people were only living by the state of labor. And then Fanon is putting his idea that man products himself through himself. According to Sartre is a French literary figure, and we cannot forget when the Fanon is coming to our way that Sartre has to come definitely. That is, Fanon makes it clear that irrepressible violence is neither sound and fury, nor the resurrection of savage instincts, nor even the effect of resentment. It is man recreating himself. According to Sartre has noted into his word that is Fanon, how the Fanon is giving the idea to the his own idea that man products himself through himself. The native cures himself of colonized neuroses by thrusting out the settler through force of arms. We know that colonizers were very who were having a very strength of arms, and they are used to do the violence by arms. When his rage boils over, he rediscovers his lost innocence, and he becomes to know himself in that he himself creates his self. So here these lines are telling that colonizers were making the spot for colonized people, and then that by force they made colonized people to fit into that spot, and then they were going to be natural in that particular sport which are made by the colonizers, so that they cannot revolt. Second, violence as a catharsis. Catharsis is a very well-known term in psychology, that is purificatory role of violence. We know that with the catharsis, there is the name of Sigmund Freud and many other psychologists who has thrown the light upon the catharsis. The third, acts as a unifying force for the native people. Fanon is saying that this violence is a term that making native people to unified. Fourth, that is Fanon maintains that violence pays not only during the colonial struggle for independence, but also in the second phase of decolonization. Because after the colonization, we all know that decolonization happened, and it was a very in a calm way, but it was a violent way. Fifth, that is violence alone. Violence committed by the people, violence organized and educated by its leaders, makes it possible for the masses to understand social truths and gives the key to them. Without the struggle, there is nothing but a fancy dress parade and the blare of the trumpets. Now, in this, Fanon is saying that violence, when we go to the word violence and the term, we always think of a personal violence, but there are political to personal and personal to political. This vice versa process is going on, and how it is going on, that in this sentence Fanon has described. Then he is saying that by the term of violence, that is a very kind of positive, we can say, bit a positive, that is native people get political consciousness and awake towards the violence. now criticized views upon the ideas of Fanon about violence. That is, Fanon mistaken when he make violence as a cause for colonial alienation, because violence was from the both sides, that is colonizer and colonized. As we have seen, the all entirely ideas of Fanon towards the violence. He has only point out the colonizers, but he is not. He was not able to see the both the sides, because even the colonized people were using the violence to revolt against the colonizer. Violence may degenerate into political masochism. A fundamental objection may be raised against Fanon's view that violence frees the individual from his fear and inferiority complexes. Fanon's own psychiatric case histories prove beyond doubt that the act of killing is dehumanizing, and that is leads to neurosis and distortion of personality. As psychology always believes that if the person is going to attempt the act of killing, that will be always dehumanizing, and it creates the frees the individual from his fear and inferiority complex. It is definitely going to be work with violence idea, but at the other end we can say that dehumanizing is happening. Sartre presents anti-Semitism as a universal phenomenon and approaches it from analytical rather than historical perspective. This both the I can see the similarity between the Sartre and Fanon. That is, they both were seeing the situation not by historical way or not a universal view, but they were only seeing the situation by the point of view around the France, or we can say around the Algeria. What is the native place for them? They were not carried the idea or historical sense into them. By their ideas, we can come to know perhaps. Now we are going to go into the addiction term. That is, can violence be an addiction? Here I have put many dialogues by the scholar. That is, this is the research work of one of the scholar, that our lab has really shown that that's true. Negative emotions are there. Chester said, but positive emotions actually also play a pretty big role in aggressive behavior as well. So aggression can feel good and that pleasure, but the associated what we call hedonic reward is a really potent motivating force. That here Chester is a research scholar. He has done many research in the term of violence, and he is telling that how he is working and what is the ideas he got from his research. That is that how positive emotions also can be considered in the violence, because it is provoking to the to do the bad things, and it bad things become the cause of one can feel good by that. So aggression is not just about I am angry and I want to hit someone. Chester said it is also about how it feels good sometimes to get revenge on someone who has wronged you, and or who you perceive as having wronged you. Now we can get to relate this whatever Chester is saying, that sometimes we feel that someone is getting get revenge towards us, or we are getting the feeling of taking revenge towards others. So it is going to under the violence. It follows this trajectory where negative and positive emotion fit together. He said, so I feel bad, I don't want to feel bad, so I am looking for things that makes me feel good. Well, we have always known that drugs and risky behavior are in that group. We are saying that aggression belongs in that group too, and that people seek it out when they are feeling bad, and that they use it like a tool to help themselves regulate their mood state. And when they do that, it activates these addiction circuits in the brain, and it reinforces this behavior of who are doing kind of violence. There are so many kinds of, now we know that violence, and there are when we see it very first time, we know when we don't know this theory, we feel that it is only the negative term, and negative causes are for responsible for this. But now we know that there are the two trajectories going with the two aspects, that is negative and positive. Both the emotions are working together here. What naltrexone basically does it blocks pleasure. Naltrexone is a kind of liquid which is helping us to behave in a certain kind of situation and circumstances, like when we are getting into struggle or something like that. He said it keeps you from feeling good from things that would normally make you feel good. It's used commonly to treat alcohol dependence. This individual, when they want to have a drink, they get a drink and they feel good. If you have a naltrexone implant which they replace every 6 weeks or so, you have a drink, you are waiting for the buzz to kick in, you might get a little, but you are not really getting the same bump that you used to, because this drug blocks the typical pleasure enhancing neurotransmitters and neurochemicals for during their job. From during their job, it stains in their way. This is my work citation. Thank you.
So, Emisha, my question is that as you mentioned, the psychological effect described by Fanon. So, there are so many effects like economical, socially, or physically. So, why you mentioned that psychological effect is Fanon mentioned that psychological effect is more staying as long. And can you find any similar ideas about psychology in Sartre's idea of psychology?
Yes, psychology is kind of field. It in comparison with the all the fields we are having, it is a new kind of, not very new, but it is new in itself. And when we go to the psychology, we know that it is the whole system or all mechanism is based into that. And Fanon is personally throw the light upon the aspect of psychological in his work, that is Wretched of the Earth, and he has given the title in the first chapter, that is on violence. So he is making it concerning, and he has having a different concern about the psychological aspect, because in the at the time World War was happening at that time, and people were very into the mental traumas, and at that time psychology were not that much developed at itself. It's this field, and Fanon was the make it light in a very bright way. So, and Sartre, yes, Sartre and Fanon both are the belongs to the French literature, and they are. I have mentioned in my presentation that Sartre is also kind of thinker, that he has not he was not having that universal view when he was coming to psychology. He was studying the French colonists, people who are living there, and their cases are to be studied. In the even when we see to the text, that is Wretched of the Earth. So in that sense, they are the both the similarity, because Fanon is also studying this kind of cases into that. But if we don't know that colonization was the process that was happening into the half of the world, but if the people, particular native people, is having this kind of struggle, so and other land, the other native people was having another kind of struggle, it should be studied in the Fanon's work, as per my commendation.
Emisha, are there any solutions given by Fanon to solve the violence?
Yes, this is the work when it was written when the in a very recent scenario when World War II was getting into end. So at that time, people were very facing a very kind of different, or we can say weird kind of disorders, mental disorders and psychological disorders were facing that. And then he has given many psychotherapy. When the psychological disorder comes, then psychologists give the psychotherapies to cure that disorder. So he might be talking about this. And any particular, I didn't study the any particular case from that text, so any particular psychotherapy I cannot count here. But if the psychology is come with the psychological disorders, then the therapy will come automatically by the psychologist, because the psychologists are having that duty to give a therapy or cure to the people. And he was a writer, and more he was a psychiatrist, and he has given a contribution 5 years to revolutionary to France, and he was serving to people even. Is it visible? Is it visible? Yes. Visible now.
Slides doesn't matter. So if you have all the slides written in PPT, what by board, then all the slides. So then you make your eye contact with camera or what you talk, then you need to see now. Then you will read, then you can get what from
Is it
the
visible?
slides. So that is how outsider people observe. When we do live streaming in their comments tab, what students are doing, they are just reading the slides. It should not be a good idea. That's why many times people don't allow PPTs. Why people ban PPT? So that people don't read the slides. So they just stand there and tell what you want to tell. Don't read anything. Don't carry paper, no slides. Just tell me 5 minutes, whatever you have prepared. That is how we can start.
Hello everyone. So I am Himanshi Parmar, and today's my topic is the Madwoman in the Attic, Annette and Antoinette, with the reference of Annette and Antoinette from Wide Sargasso Sea. And these are my personal informations. And now, first, it is very important to understand that what is the Madwoman in the Attic. So, attic means the cage, and the Madwoman in the Attic is a book. Full title of the book is The Madwoman in the Attic, the Woman Writer and the 19th Century Literature, Literary Imagination. And this is the book by Sandra Gilbert and Susan Gubbard, written in 1979. So the title of this book is taken from Charlotte Bronte's novel Jane Eyre, which is about Mr. Rochester and Jane Eyre's love story. And in that novel, we find there is one sequence where first wife of Mr. Rochester, Bertha Mason, came, and and she is secretly locked in the attic apartment, attic apartment of Mr. Rochester.
The book is also examining Victorian literature from feminist perspective, that how male-dominated society overpower the women writers, and they influenced women writer. The book is also examine some female writers like Jane Austen, Mary Shelley, Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte, George Eliot, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, Christina Rossetti, and Emily Dickinson. uh, so here we find that all these women writers are forced to write in one particular manner by all these like male writers, and like they have to portray their female character as either angel or the monster, according to Gilbert and Susan Gubbard. So, and if any woman are going against this mentality, then they have to face several kind of we can say mental torture or some kind of harassment. For that Sander Gilbert and Susan Gubar, writer of this book, are giving example of Virginia Woolf. As Virginia Woolf is said that women writers must kill the aesthetic ideals through which they themselves have been killed into art. So here we can take that Virginia Woolf is also a kind of rebellious kind of writer who later on faced several problems, or we can say mental torture by society, or we can say male dominated writing, literary writing era. So Susan and Sandra also wrote about the anxiety of authorship, which we can connect with the Virginia Woolf's example, that how she faced several mental torture and later on she just committed suicide and she got madness. So Mad Woman in the Attic, we can also put Virginia Woolf in that category. And also one quote that is given by Sandra and Susan, we connect here, is a life of feminine submission, of contemplative purity, is a life of silence, a life that has no pen and no story, while a life of female rebellion is a significant action, is a life that must be silenced, a life whose monstrous pen tells a terrible story. So this quote we can also connect with the example of Virginia Woolf, and how Virginia Woolf are going against to the this society of male dominated society, and do something that is uniqueness, bring uniqueness, then from like bring uniqueness from the male writers, and how she failed this trauma and all these things that we have considered here. And the another thing is now we are moving further with the Wide Sargasso Sea. So Wide Sargasso Sea is a prequel of Charlotte Bronte's novel Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre is, as I told before, that love story between Mr. Rochester and Jane Eyre, and in that we find that sequence of Bertha, and how. So Wide Sargasso Sea is particularly focusing on Bertha's character and revolving around that the character of Bertha, that how she got mad. And Wide Sargasso Sea is well known, is written by Jean Rhys, written in 1966, and the novel was originally published in 1966 only. The major characters of this novel are Edward Rochester, Christophine, Daniel Cosway, Antoinette Cosway, and Annette Cosway. And now I have taken two examples, two female characters who are the mad woman in the attic in the novel. So the first I have taken is Annette Cosway, who is the mother of our female protagonist Antoinette, and she was not a mad from beginning, but later on, because of several reasons, she got mad, and that reason I have taken here, that how she got mad, and she has forced to be in the house under the we can say under the supervision of servants. So first she was happy with her family, but later on she faced death of his husband, and due to death of his husband she faced several financial poor financial condition or financial problems. So she has to marry with Mr. Masun, who is very rich person. And after marrying with Mr. Masun, she is not so happy because they have unhappy relationship. she got ignorance from Mr. Masoon. She got no love for Mr. Masoon, and because of all these, we can say, reasons, she somewhere started facing that mental trauma, or we can say p- psychological psychological disorders. And when her son Perry was died in the accident where when some black people set fire on her house, Annette's house, and in that Perry was burned out, and she saw that her son is burning out, and that thing affect her so affect her so um, uh, widely, and she got mad. Now after getting married, she has forced by her husband, or we can say the society, to forced her to be in her own house, in the cage, or we can say in the attic, under the supervision of servants. But she is not happy, she is not got that fair, we can say, fair justice. After being met, she got abused by servants. So we find that Annette is somewhere a mad woman in the attic in the novel. The another one is Antoinette, our female protagonist. She is happy, jolly, and but lonely girl in the beginning of the novel. And why she is lonely, so that we came to know by this dialogue from Wide Sargasso Sea. And the dialogue is, "There is no looking glass here, and I don't know what I am like now. I remember watching myself brush my hair, and how my eyes looked back at me. The girl I saw was myself, yet not quite myself. Long ago, when I was a child and very lonely, I tried to kiss her, but the glass was between us, hard, cold, misted over with my breath. Now they have taken everything away. What am I doing in this place? And who am I?" So from childhood we find that she has several kind of loneliness, because she didn't get that family attachment or family environment. As her mother, we find that she is mad, and she has stepfather, so she never get that love. So she, from beginning, she is lonely, and she also witnessed abusement of her mother. As I have mentioned, that her mother Annette was abused by servant, and and this Antoinette became witness of that. And after that, she has sent to the hostel, and when she came back, she has forced to marry, arranged marriage with Mr. Rochester, a gentleman of England, who is, we can say, why she has forced to marry Mr. Rochester. There is a story, because that Victorian mentality is coming again here. We can say that that woman is not able to handle her own lots of fortune, so she has to dependent or rely on men. That mentality is overpowering there. So she has forced to marry Mr. Rochester, and she married Mr. Rochester for the sake of security of her fortune and for herself. And after the marriage, she Mr. Rochester, like we can say, time and again started doubting her. That when Mr. Rochester came to know that, okay, her mother was also mad, then she also started doubting on Antoinette, that must, if the mother is mad, then must be the daughter should will be mad. So as mother, as daughter, that thing he started thinking of, and he implied the identity of Bertha. He started calling Bertha to Antoinette. So Antoinette is rebelling that and saying that Bertha is not my name. You are trying to make me into someone else, calling me by another name. I know that's Obey too. Now we see that Antoinette is not mad, but the madness is implied by Rochester, and he also started abusing and ignoring Antoinette, and also he betrayed Antoinette and make physical relationship with a black girl. So this loneliness and all this betrayal and all these things are lead Antoinette towards the hallucination and later on the madness. Then Rochester took him back to the England and locked her in the attic of his palace, or we can say his home, under the surveillance of maid whose name is Graceful, and there we find that she was not mad, but that that madness was implied by Rochester, and then now she is becoming mad. And then we find at the last part of the novel we find that she set fire in the house and she died, and before setting the fire she write that I will write my name in the fire red, Antoinette Masson, Nee Causeway, Mount Clavery Convent, Spanish Town, Jamaica, 1839. So we find that how she is describing her different perspective, different identities, that what identities she got. Now I want to relate it with present time. In present time we also find that there are lot many criminals are there in the jail, but if we uh, deeply go into the story of them, we find that many of them are harassed, or we can say mental or psychologically tortured by the family or by the society, on because of that torture, because of that we can say that mental trauma, they committed that crime. So they are, in a sense, if we see that they are not criminals, but they are criminals because their psychology are working in that form. For here we can also take example of movie Provoked, that was by Aishwarya Rai, and in that movie we find that how Aishwarya Rai forced by her husband to be in the house, or to not to do what, even she want to do something, she was denied by the husband if husband doesn't like. And at the end that mental trauma or mental psychological disorder overpower her, and she tried to burn her husband, or we can say burned or killed her husband. So that thing we find that relevance with here, that same way that how Antoinette and Annette are got mad, she is also got psychologically disorder. Now literary relevance, so I have taken two examples, Ophelia and this Piccola. So the first Ophelia, from the Ophelia is the female protagonist of Hamlet, written by William Shakespeare, and in the she was a girl who is mainly dependent on, we can say, male around her. So we find that like she has no vision, she has no clear vision, that she herself are saying in the novel Hamlet, in the drama Hamlet, that I do not know, my lord, what I should think. She is telling to her father. So we find that she has no clear vision. From beginning she started being mad. Then there are several incidents like her father's death by her lover. So that thing also lead her towards that mental trauma, or we can say also she was abandoned by her lover. So Ophelia's madness is mainly driven by loss of male influence in her life. And for that, Heather Brown says that Ophelia is Polonius Pound, Lear's chess sister, and Hamlet's lover. Once these male influence are removed and this description no longer define Ophelia, she loses her identity and become mad. So we find that what here attic is not just cage, but attic has a much wider meaning. For Ophelia, the attic is like male patriarchy, and we can say that her reliance on that male, that she is nothing because without her father or her lover. So that mentality is at itself attic for Ophelia, and at the end Ophelia is died in madness. And now the second second character I have taken is a Piccola. Piccola is the female protagonist of Bluest Eye novel by Toni Morrison. So Piccola is an 11-year poor black girl who is mainly believing that she is ugly, and if she has blue eyes, then she would be beautiful. So in Piccola's character, we also find that she didn't get that family environment same as Antoinette. She didn't get any family environment because her father and mother both are mostly quarreling with each other, and like we can say they are just fighting with each other. So that mentally disturbed her. Also she was, we can say, abused by her father, distrusted by her mother. This we can know that when Piccola's father abused her and she was lying in the floor, her mother didn't even believe that okay, this father are done this thing with her, or even if she is believed that okay, my husband is doing something wrong with my daughter, then even she is not accepting that thing. So we find that she was distrusted, and all mostly in the novel she was called nasty little black bitch by his mother, so that all that mentally disturbed her. Also she was harassed by friend as she was blamed to kill cat, or we can say dog, and other way they are harassing Piccola. And also she get pregnant by her own father, so that by her own father, and also that after getting pregnant she gave birth to the child, and the child unfortunately died. So that all things are lead her towards madness, and she started believing after getting mad, she started believing that she has blue eyes now. And here we find that ethic is nothing but a patriarchal society or white mentality, that she has that white mentality that if I was born as white, if I was born with blue eyes, I my fortune will be good. So that she never able to came out of that white mentality. So here ethic for Piccola is white mentality, and we can say white attraction. So these are my citations, and thank you. Antoinette and Annette, both the characters we can consider as a symbolically, we can consider as the typical Victorian woman who are dependent on male, or we can say are not able to rebel against the men. So when we can find that husband of Annette died, then she has no choice, she has poor financial conditions. So what she is not choose to go out and to job, or we can say anything that is give him that some fortune, but she choose to marry a rich man. So that thing we find that Victorian mentality there. Also in Antoinette's character we find that when this Antoinette has large fortune by her father, rich father, so she is not choose to live by herself to in lavish life. She is not choose to live lavish life, but what she did is she used to marry Mr. Rochester for the sake of we can say stability or security of that. So symbolically they both women are describing the Victorian mentality of woman.
Yes, so my question is that there was when this Wolf and Jean Rhys they were writing at that time, there was a struggle kind of anxiety of authorship. So at that time, can you still you can find in contemporary time that struggle in feminine discourse or in any other discourse?
So now, if we see that at that time they have authorship anxiety of authorship, mainly women are facing anxiety of authorship at that time. But in present time, we find that we have different kind of anxiety. We have anxiety of, like we can say, political writing, or we can say left and right wing anxieties. And the another anxieties which we have is like we have religious anxieties. Like if we are writing something, we all are aware about this writer Salman Rushdie's fatwa. So how they are, it is working here. It is not for male or woman here. Now it is for all, generalizing it. And how now what is anxiety? It is religion, or it is, we can say, the politics, or other things.
Okay, before we see this presentation, from one of the previous presentations, let me share a screen. This was in Emisha's presentation in work citations. Last citation, the others were quite well done. Only indentation is not done. First line is near the margin. Other lines are pushed back. That is called indentation. That is to be done. So that, yeah, I think you are seeing this slide. Work citation I am sharing. So this here I think is disconnected. So that one thing, and the last one is Stanford Encyclopedia. It's a very good website, good resource, but citation is not proper. If you click on that link that is given there, we come to this site, wherein they already have given ready-made citation information. So who is the writer of this entry? It is John Drabinsky. And the name also is given. So we just have to copy paste that detail. It will go with D, Drabinsky, alphabetical order. It will be like that. So this plato.stanford.edu is quite a good resource, and they are giving. So whenever you will see a very qualitative, academically enriching resource available, they will give how to cite also, because they understand that people who will be coming here, they will require how to cite another thing. So they are providing in various ways the citation. So once these people are providing, we get 2-3 advantage. One, we get ready-made details. Another one, we can rely on those things, because it will be academically very sound information there. So that is also one of the ways that you can look how they are giving. I think we have discussed this in workshop last time. Both the classes were together, and we have discussed several such examples also. Okay, now you can share your screen. It is share. I think it is shareable, but now you can open your PPT.
Slide is visible. Hello everyone. Today is the third day of presentation, and today I'm dealing the subaltern perspective through Antoinette's character in Wide Sargasso Sea. This is my personal informations. And first I'm dealing the subaltern terms, and that's this presentation also based on the subaltern perspective view of in this Wide Sargasso Sea. The first we have looked at the term subaltern. Subaltern means describe the lower status. It means the term was originally introduced by the Italian Marxist theorist Antonio Gramsci to speak of politically uncoordinated popular mass. However, the word has a great associations with the post-colonial theory through a collective of Indian writers headed by Ranjan Guha called Subaltern Study. and even more so through the writing of Gayatri Spivak. Gayatri Spivak also dealings with this in her essay. In the post-colonial theory, the term subaltern was used to refer the socially marginalized and non-elite groups in the still while colonized. That's these terms also dealing with the peoples are the marginalized peoples. And Spivak would draw on deconstructionism, Marxism, and feminism as the question in her famous essay of the name Can the Subaltern Speak? And her answer in this essay, she also given the subaltern subject is irretrievably heterogeneous and cannot be invoked a unified voice. And further, there are no subject position in English or Indian discourse that would allow to Saban to know or speak itself. And this is doubtly so for the subaltern women in colonial contexts who have neither the conceptual language to speak nor the ear of colonial indigenous men to listen. In this subaltern terms also describe that the women's they are not be given the this right of speaking. It means the language, conceptual language to speak no. And now that we now I'm discuss the about authors. The Jean Rhys was born and brought up in the Dominica, a former British colony with a society that encompasses extreme diversity of both European and African cultures. And in the topic of main concern is rise, the texts are human relationship either between man and woman or apprehensions about personal identity. Reis emerged as a master storyteller, and she create effective character in her novels, and she also represent character through the character identity, madness, and slavery through her character. And the subaltern perspective in this novel, in we have in the Wide Sargasso Sea, articulate of race and gender in the context of debate that has been waged with the feminist post-colonial study around the representation of racial otherness. On the one hand, critics like Benita Perry contend that we need to recover historical repressed knowledges on to construct the speaking position of the subaltern. That Benita Perry also focus of the speaking position of the subaltern. And another hand, the Spivak and in her followers also tells that the subaltern voice invoking historical context and reproduce the epistemic violence of imperialism. It imposed on the subaltern Western assumptions of embodied subjectivity and not simply by giving his her voice back. And Spivak and Perry both are invoke White Sargasso Sea's representation of black Creoles to illustrate their respective approach. In the novel, exposes the conventional cultural constructions through which Antoinette, like a Rochester, represent her racial others, but is the paradoxical also resist the assigning the subalterns the functions of the mere repository of Eurocentric assumptions. At reading the black subject as an unmeditated representation of historical African Creoles by foregrounded the complex and shifting cultural constructs of race, sex, and class through which the black Creoles are perceived in this novel. In these novels are also focuses of the race, sex, and classes conflict in the black Creoles and white. And Black resistance is Wide Sargasso Sea is located the complex interplay between the colonial strategies and subaltern practice. The novel's complex delineations of pure histories and cultures of Caribbean forecloses a voice recovery by the hampering the reader identification with Antoinette. And in this novel, the protagonist of Antoinette is insecure and disoriented so much that she seems to functions merrily by the internalizing others, especially her mother's language and contradictions value. And Antonians are so insecure, and in that sense the one black little girls also are telling that the white cockroaches, and that means she is also the leave that life in the Jamaica, that and that place the black are also not be respected of the Antoinette and the subaltern treatment of Antoinette. The first sections of the novel, the young Antoinette's perceptual and psychological point of view, in considerably confused and confusing. And Antoinette was neither European nor a black, but a white and West Indian. And she also suffering that in the European and not a black, but also suffering that the black girls and blacks identity for that background to stamped as the outsider, and raise as brought to life the character of Antoinette from her childhood impression of life in Dominica. In these novels also represent the life of authors Jean Rhys. Also the same in Jean Rhys childhood also represent her life in these novels, and through the character of Antoinette. And the novel display Annette and Antoinette's confrontations with a traumatic experience. Traumatic experience, we have to know that Annette's sons, the was die in the burns by the black peoples, and Antoinette also suffered in and suffers of the uncomfortations in the black Creole's identity given her, and the black slave were free from the rules of white plantations owners. And one incident, like when Antoinette was pushed towards the margins, is when she was going to convent for Aunt Cora's house. At that time, the black woman and boy with Negro, that's is cheating some chasing her some words like the looking the crazy girl, you crazy like your mother's, your aunt fighting it to have you in house, your mother walk alone with no shoes and shocking on her feet. She sends calots. She tried to kill her husband, and she tried to kill you too. That day you go to see her. She has eyes like zombies too. In this means the black peoples are also be suffering that's suffering from those words, and Antoinette is very suffering for the behavior of the black peoples. And the highlights point of this novel, the novel's foreground its black resistance without, however, offering unmeditated access to alternative Negro traditions or to a country discourse to an imperialist way of knowing. The novel neither celebrates improvisational articulations of the West Indian world from the black Creoles point of view, nor put the resilience Christophine in the role of the self-determining individualist Antoinette felt to become, and rather its highlight to ways in which black Creoles agency was primarily identified as a criminality and affirmed not for its own sake so much as to justifying the subjugated and obscure white dominations. And this, thank you, and this is my references.
So my question is, as you mentioned that Antoinette as a subaltern. So Rochester's treatment with, or we can say behavior with Antoinette is because of subaltern or because of patriarchal mentality. What is the reason behind that?
Yes, yes. Rochester was behave like behave. Rochester is behave married with the Antonius in only for richness, only for base of money, and that the Antonius is subaltern. It's not it. In perspective of Rochester, that is not a view of subaltern, but it is a patriarchal view. We have look at the in the Antonius character, because the Rochester are not given to respect to Antonius. He also proved that the Antonius is mad, and then went to in England, and that.
Yes, you have taken the reference of the essay by Gayatri Spivak, that is Can the Subaltern Speak? So, how Gayatri Spivak is looking towards the idea of Eurocentric concept.
Yes, Gayatri Spivak also in this she gives the term of subaltern, and in the idea of Eurocentric concept, it means the something is in these novels in this novel that Jean Rhys also the given to identity of Creole, and not be European, and not be white. But in the place, she described the place of Dominica, and that give to the in the idea in the place the in the also that the that which Antonius is suffering from the black peoples who are that terribly not accepted the identity, and not accepted her struggling of that life. And
Visible? Okay. So my name is Hirva Pandya. Today I am going to deal with the topic violence in Wretched of the Earth. This is my personal information. Points to ponder about the writer, about the text. What is decolonization? Violence in Wretched of the Earth. Example of some cases studied by Fanon. Heart of Darkness. Violence in Black Lives Matter movement. Violence in recent time. Critics' views on decolonization. Conclusion and work citation. About the writer. Uh, French Omar Fanon was one of the most important writers in Black Atlantic theory. Born on the island of Martinique under French colonial rule, in his lifetime he published two key original works, Black Skin, White Mask and Wretched of the Earth. He was died on December 6, 1961. About the Wretched of the Earth, the text consisting 5 chapters. The chapter 1 is on violence. Chapter 2 is the colonized may form a number political organization. Chapter 3 is about Fanon discuss how these different groups, the urban allied, the urban workers and rural fighters get together to form a nation after independence from the colonists. Chapter 4 is about national culture, and chapter 5 there is some cases studied by Fanon and mental health issues. What is decolonization? According to Cambridge Dictionary, the process in which a country that was previously a colony controlled by other country becomes politically independent, the process of getting rid of colonies. According to Tuck and Young, a common move of settler innocence occurs when people rely too heavily on the notion to decolonize your mind, thinking knowledge. This can include efforts read more black, brown, indigenous writer. For example, decolonial curriculum thinking can indeed be a substantial part of the movement. It is a powerful tool for deconstructing colonial influence on knowledge and education. Here I taken the reference of Mimi. Mimi refers decolonization as a descriptive portraits. Violence in Wretched of the Earth. On violence, Fanon was written as a critical reflection on 1968 student riots in Europe and the US, and it is in this context the ardent text issue with Fanon, Jean-Paul Sartre, and George Sorel as leading thinkers who ardent suggest defend violence for its own sake. Fanon outlined both potentiality and negative aspect of violence. As Fanon used here example of Algerian, in that he notes that decolonization is the meeting of the two forces opposed to each other by their very nature. Their first encounter was marked by violence and their existence together. In the preface to Wretched of the Earth, Sartre usefully summarized Fanon's analysis. Violence situate in it within medicalized discourse by stating that the native curse himself of colonial neuroses by thrashing out of the settlers through force of arms. To explain this, Fanon draws upon example from psychiatric practice. These observations are done by Josh Pallas, who is the research assistant politics and international studies at the Faculty of Law, Humanities and Arts. He, Josh Pallas has observed that violence is a negative effect. As Fanon views that violence, the currency of colonialism, it becomes omnipresent feature of daily life for the colonial subject. French Fanon provides a useful account of both the positive and negative effects of colonial violence on individual. Case study, here we are studying the already studying the cases in chapter 5 though, so I don't repeat it. Violence in Heart of Darkness. Heart of Darkness is written by Joseph Conrad, in which the writer mainly focus on idea of colonialism. In Heart of Darkness, African natives are enslaved and abused, crying out voicelessly against the oppression of imperialism. Each instance of interaction with male African natives reflects that deconstruction and violence. The natives are seen chained by iron collars. This is a process of colonization. Next, starved, beaten, subsisting on rotten hippo. This is the main main incident in the Heart of Darkness, beaten subsisting on rotten hippo meat, forced into soul crushing and meaningless, and finally ruthlessly murdered. Violence in recent time, with reference to Heart of Darkness and Wretched of the Earth, and Express. This is a recent incident in an Express Research Group report. India's most densely populated district with the capital's lowest number of banks, from its small coaching center, its little business, its open drains to its metro line. It is mixed population through the recent polarization what frames the Northeast Delhi violence, leaving 42 dead. As homes and shops, you were seeing that they were burnt out, and gunshots rang through crowded lanes. A part of a nation's capital was thrust into the nation consciousness. Northeast Delhi, India's most densely populated district, one of the its poorest, holding the highest Muslim population among Delhi 9 census district and the least number of its bank branches. Violence in the Black Lives Matter movement. Black Lives Matter movement happening in the 2018, in which cricketer Hardik Pandya also taking a knee for support this movement. Black Lives Matter is a community-based movement that advanced as a consequence of a Facebook post made by an activist from Auckland. Black Lives Matter means numerous things to numerous individuals, yet its voice has been most resoundingly heard. Situation where the revitalizing cry is the subject of utilization of ridiculous, destructive, compel against unarmed black individual by cop. Again, it is Black Lives Matter movement is white people are want to colonize the black people, and the UK want to colonize Africa. From the above research, we came to conclusion that not only Black Lives Matter, but the lives of indigenous people also matter, because both are interlinked with each other. Both faced oppression and discrimination from the colonizers. Edwards said the post-colonial theory and the literature of decolonization, as Lufti Hamdi said, observation. This theory is mainly based on what said considered the false image of the Orient fabricated by Western thinkers as the primitive other in contrast with the civilized West. He believes that the consequences of colonialism are still persisting in the form of the chaos, coups, and corruption, civil wars, and bloodshed, which permeates many ex-colonies. The powerful colonizer has imposed a language and a culture, whereas those of the Oriental peoples have been ignored. So to sum up, it can be said that decolonization is not only matter of the big colony like America and United Kingdom, but it is also seen in the India as well, as there is also a moment of decolonization. It is therefore noted that decolonization is political procedure that involves violence and conflicts, and it is also seen in the literary text like Blue Sky, that black people versus white people, the Mr. Henry who was white, and Piccola Breedlove who was black. Thank you. These are my work citation. Thank you.
So, Hirva, my question is, as you mentioned in your slide that colonialism in Heart of Darkness. So, can you give any example of colonial violence in Heart of Darkness, like
Yeah.
incident?
Yes, there is colonial violence. The colonizers are beaten by the colonies because there are a black chain incident. They were hang. They were joined with black chain, iron chain, and it is it. The black chain incident is most probably most significant incident in the heart of darkness, and by that incident we can conclude that heart of darkness is uh, dealing with the colonizing process.
Eva, my question is which type of negative aspect of violence you find in the Wretches of the Earth?
which ca- which can
Which type of negative aspect of violence you find in Wretches of the Earth?
Yes, there is full of chapter on the violence, a case studied by Fanon, and in that case study of there is multiple case study by Fanon, and this case study, these all case studies we are studying in uh, our class. So in that there is negative aspect, there is negative effect of violence.
Okay, before I come and give a few things about feedback, this presentation from Himanshi, let us see. So based on this book, a good presentation was done on this book by Sandra Gilbert and Susan Guber, yes, the Madwoman in the Attic. Now see how you organize the sites. Each and every site should be complete in its own way. It should not be like hanging something. So last year you said that according to so and so, women writers of 19th century were forced to portray female characters as either embodying the angel or the monster. So that is one. And then this against this mentality is in a new slide. Now this all should be organized in one slide. One slide should be complete in itself. So this linking that against this, now what is this? It should be in that slide. Now it is in the previous slide. It is not a paragraph. When you write a paragraph, it is fine. But making slides is not making paragraphs. Like writing a research paper in a text is a different thing, and making slides is a different thing also. So each and every slide should be complete in itself with whatever point one is talking about. Okay, so a very quick feedback. Most of you did quite a good work. Presentations were quite good. Content you have taken from a good sources also. Only thing, like from this level, you should be like writing about yourself. That is very important. That finding a good source is one thing, and then what you want to tell is something that is very much necessary also. Aamena presented well with the help of Lacan and Helena Sixou. Observations were given in that slide. Most of you might be taking from this article, from where you might have cited the thing. So as the other article we were talking about, that this article is citing Helena Sixou or Lacan, but you are citing that article. So that is how you have to write that as the example that was given to the student. Every time it is not repeated, but you have to like learn from that. If somebody has done, you also have done the similar thing. That understanding, if you develop, then you learn from one instruction. Somehow I am seeing that is not happening. Everybody is waiting for their feedback only. So then once what is told to you, you take only that. You don't take other people's feedback, even though you are doing the same thing. So everything cannot be noted down very quickly when one by one people are coming. You have to keep on doing technical change from this person to another person. So lots of things you have to do. So each and every time you cannot pick up the feedback and tell personally everybody. So generally you pick up after 2-3 presentations or at the end like this. But that is for everybody. You have to also say, okay, you have also done that. Though it is not identified or pinpointed, but you have to improve from that also. Otherwise, the same thing we have to repeat to the next person next day, then to the third person the third day, then in the next semester to another person, the same thing we have to keep on repeating if you don't learn from what feedback are given to other students. So that way you also see that when you refer to articles, how you take that article and how you cite that. The source was good of that article. Bhavna also presented well. The answers are not given properly, so that you have to work on question and answer part. Dhruvita's point also was good on globalization. And there were several good questions also being raised. Also this liberalism and globalization. What is the difference between liberalism and globalization? That was also, so you have to like keep on asking yourself. Now there are lots of websites where difference between is given. There are so many sites. Recently I shared one document from one of the sites which is for the school children. So even in the school children, when they are learning social sciences, they learn about imperialism, colonialism, and the simple differences, that what is that. So that site, you should be curious, like you are working on a concept, so your curiosity can lead to those things. So that liberalism and globalization needs to be seen. Also the question of this, there was this question from online that what is happening to globalization now? Are these good days of globalization or bad days? So obviously when there is this question coming, it means it is not good days. From the question itself we understand that why this question has emerged. If it had it been good days, then there was no need to ask a question. So that's why we understand that when somebody is asking a question, it means there is some problem. Otherwise, there is no need of a question itself. So there is a problem because nowadays people are moving towards protectionism. People are becoming more local rather than global. That is what everywhere it is seen. So recently only you might have seen that India very proudly said that we have this made in India Vande Bharat train. So now you are not proud of collaborating with other people. In globalization, you are proud of collaboration. You very proudly say that we have joined hands with Japan, with China, with America, with Germany, and this train has come up. That sense of pride that you are collaborating with the global power in making something is dying away now. Now everybody is saying that we made it. It is Swadeshi. It is local. It means these are challenging days for globalization. That is what is seen. So protectionism is growing in terms of the thing. Countries like America, who were giving jobs to everybody, now they are asking that our job should be for Americans first. So it is protecting the rights and the jobs of the native citizens. So instead of going for a merit and picking up merit from the entire world, entire globe, you are becoming local. That no, first job to my people. So even when countries like America start thinking in that way, then this is challenging days for globalization that can be seen there. Dhvani presented on this. You need to work on the title, proper title, thematic study, themes of foe. Now, when you don't write foe in single unit comma, foe becomes just enemy only. So, are you talking only about enemy, the concept of enemy, or are you talking about a literary text that is foe? So, that is how inverted comma changes the meaning. Now, somebody who is watching your video is not aware about that there is a novel like foe. They may think that you are just talking about enemy. There is some thing about like there are essays on friendship, there are presentations on friendship. So here it is on enemy. Some presentation on the types of enemies and how enemies are made, and that might be there. So inverted comma, or you write a name, James Coetzee's foe. That clarity is necessary. Divya Parmar, Wretched of the Earth, slides and were quite well prepared. Content was good on the slides. The other things we have suggested about how to make decent looking slides. Divya Sheta also we referred to a couple of instructions that how you cite quotes and other things. There were also some good questions about difference between imperialism by Dhvani and colonialism. And also Divya Parmar also asked a good question. That she has asked in a quite a good manner that you have referred to M.H. Abraham's this. So in that context, my question is coming. So you locate your question in a proper way. You just don't throw the question. પેલા બોલનાર બેફલ થઈ જાય કે આવું કઈ મેં તો કીધું જ નથી, આ પ્રશ્ન આવ્યો ક્યાંથી? There was nothing like this in my presentation. Why this question is coming? So you locate that. Sometimes you can also say that on one of your slides you mentioned this. Now in this context my question is this. So that is a proper way of asking question, not just throwing question in blindness, but contextualizing the thing and then you ask a question. Emisha also presented well. The given content was presented quite well. The other things I have suggested in between. Okay. Himanshi also was good with Madwoman and the attic. Hinaba, Sarvaiya's this was also good. Content-wise, all the things were very good. You were talking about Gayatri Spivak, you cited also that as per Gayatri Spivak, this, that, and this work also can the subaltern speak, but in citation it was not there. So that also is one point that you have to understand that some materials are to prepare people for exams. Now those are not considered reference materials or of quality material. That like I don't know how to tell you because for you whatever comes is of good quality only. But something is like this benchmark you can put that something that is helping to pass exams are not of very good quality. In this part what you are trying to look as a researcher. So something for a research writing is different and something for exam writing is different. These two difference if you keep in mind, then things will be okay. When you write for exam, you have to like refer to study notes for themes, for character study, for plot and other things. You can't do the same thing when you are doing research-based writing. And this is very confusing because students are not able to understand that there it is working. Here, what's the problem? There, but in answers, you don't have to cite anything. You don't have to remember long citations in answers. Answer some kind of question and understanding is to be given. So you can pick up on any sources and you can write there. But research writing is done at the home. Open book it is. It is open internet. It is not like exam where you are not supposed to look anywhere. In research writing, you are free to look anywhere. When you will write a dissertation, a full paper will be there. You don't have to give any exam. You just have to write dissertation and that you will be writing at your home with discussing with everybody, referring to this person, that person, website, everything. It is not like you are in a room and then you are told now you write your dissertation. Nothing will be given to you. From your memory you write. No, it is a different thing. So what is for the exams is a different thing and for research it is a different thing. So in research we have ample time to find qualitative things. And we investigate, we ascertain, we check everything, cross-verify, and then we say, okay, this is of good quality. That time we have. In exam, you don't have that time. So that is not expected in exams. But in research writing, it is. So presentations, it is expected. So this you have to start working on that. Are these materials for references, for research writing, or for passing some exams like net set exams? For that the material is prepared to pass net set exam. You can't use that for research writing. More reference books are required which are written by the renowned critics of that area. So if you have a choice between Gayatri Spivak and somebody, an original essay is Gayatri Spivak, you should be citing Gayatri Spivak only. આ તો કઈ કહેવાનું હોય જ નહીં. એ તો ગાયત્રી સ્પિવાકને જ સાઇટ કરવાનું હોય ને. એનો એસે આપણે રેફર કરતા હોય તો પછી બીજા કોઈને થોડું સાઇટ કરવાનું હોય ત્યાં. જ્યાં ઓરિજિનલ જ એ છે તો પછી તો એ જ કરવાનું હોય. આપણે ગંગોત્રી ગયા હોય તો ત્યાંથી જ ગંગા લઈને ત્યાં થોડી ટબુડીમાં પાણી વેચાતું લઈને આવીએ કે આ કોઈક પેક કરી દઈએ તો આપણે સીધું જ ભરી લઈએ ત્યાંથી. So that is what it is. So when you have that source, why cite study material things? So this talk with other students also, with juniors also. કે આ બધું રિપીટ કરીને માથું ભમી જાય કે આવી વાતો કરવાની હોય કે પીજીના સ્ટુડન્ટ આટલું તો સમજતા હોય ને કે તમારી પાસે જ્યારે મેઇન રાઇટરનું નામ છે, એનું વર્ક છે, તો એને બદલે તમે કોઈ સ્ટડી મટીરિયલની સાઇટ એમાંથી સાઇટ કરો તો હાઉ ઓકવર્ડ ઇટ લુક્સ. So you have to refer, read, and then you have to cite that source. Wikipedia we told you can use, but શેના માટે? ઓરિજિનલ સોર્સે પહોંચવા માટે વાપરવાનો છે, એ રસ્તા તરીકે ઉપયોગ કરવાનો છે વિકીપીડિયા. ત્યાં રેફરન્સીસ, then you go to reference, you open the book, find that page where it is written, and then you pick up that and then the writer. હવે તો બુક તમે જોઈ લીધી એટલે રિફર કરી લીધી. આ યાદી રેફરન્સની તો છે. You have referred it, so you now write it. You have, then if you write Wikipedia, then people will say that, well, you don't know how to write research, or you don't know the basics of citations, if you are not able to. So that way you have to see this. And the last one was by Hirva. Black Lives Matters were connected with Heart of Darkness and Wretched of the Earth also. Okay? So all even the present things when you give newspapers, other thing, that also you have to refer. In which newspaper, when, who was the writer, that all are very important, because we see to nowadays that lots of wrong things are published. So if it is in a not so valuable newspaper, then you can't cite those things. It is highly problematic. That is what we study in this critical thinking workshop also, that what we are referring to, citing, that should be checked several times before referring to that also. Okay, so we end today, and for the tomorrow's, wish you the best for tomorrow's presentations.